Okay guys, I want to show you a very important technique today, and that is called slipping and scoring. Now, slipping and scoring is basically the glue of the ceramic world. So it's really, really important if you want to ever stick two pieces of clay together. This is usually happening when your clay is leather hard, and all that means is that the clay has dried out a little bit so that it's still flexible, but a little bit more stiff than it would be if it came fresh from the bag. So what you want to do is make your piece, let them dry out a little bit, and then you attach them together. So I want to start with just a sample piece here so you can get an idea of what I'm talking about. So I'm just going to connect these two pieces to each other like this. So the first step is to actually just mark where it's going to be attaching. So I'm going to mark it with a pencil, and I'll just very lightly draw along here. You don't need to use a pencil, just use whatever is something that's sharp, something that can make a mark. I can see here now where I want it to attach, and this one I don't need to mark because I just know it's going to be right along the edge. So the first part of slipping and scoring is the scoring part. Now all scoring is just a very fancy way of saying to scratch. So all we need to do is use a fork or any other sharp tool that you have and just scratch the clay where you're attaching it. You want to go in at least two directions when you're scratching though. So I scratch one way, scratch the other way. Just like that. Rather going too deep than going too shallow. If you scratch just the surface of it, it's not really going to work. The whole idea behind scoring is working sort of like Velcro so that the clay can really grab onto itself. So it's important that you go deep enough so that there's some friction there. So I scored one side and I'm going to score the other side. So there you go, just along the bottom there. So you can see how rough I made it. That's really what you're looking for. You don't want to go too shallow. Okay, scoring is done. Next step is slipping. What slip is basically just really wet clay. So the easiest way to make this is to just use some dried out clay. So break up some dried out clay into small pieces and just add a little bit of water and let it sit for about 30 minutes or so, and then you'll have your slip. So it just looks like this. It should be kind of lumpy. Now I'm going to apply the slip, and I want to just apply it all along this line here. Now make sure you're grabbing the chunks of the slip as well, not just the liquid stuff that's staying on the top. You want to get some of those chunks too. So something like that, right? You can see the slip because it's a lighter color than the clay. Okay, now I'm just going to line them up. Double check. I'll look on either side to make sure it's within the lines that I wanted it to be. And then I'm going to push down. But of course, if I push directly from the top, this piece is just going to collapse. It's going to fall over. So I'm going to hold it in both of my hands and sort of rock it back and forth. So I'm going to slide it back and forth along those points, all while pushing down as much as I can, but without making it collapse. So you just kind of learn how much pressure you can use by working with clay. So what you want to see here is the slip squeezing out the sides there. That's really good. Don't worry about how ugly this looks. We're going to clean it all up later. Right now we're just focused on making a really good attachment. So when you're sliding, when you feel like you can't slide it anymore, that's when you know it's grabbed on and it's going to stay. So now what you want to do is let this sit for about 5-10 minutes so it can dry out, and then we're going to go back and clean up this. So now this has dried out quite a bit. You can see that the slip has actually darkened and it's a bit stiff now. instead of so liquid. So this is what we're looking for, where it becomes a little bit stiffer. So now I would just run my finger along here to smooth that all out. I find that that makes a really nice smooth effect. You can also use a tool if you prefer. And this side. Now I wouldn't use water here, simply because we just waited all that time for the slip to dry. So why would we make it wet again? Right? So there we go. So now this is still a little bit weak, so I would still let it sit for a little while to dry out completely before I'm going to put any sort of pressure on this. But if this was my finished piece, I could just set it now down to dry and it will be good. Okay guys, so now you understand the process of slipping and scoring and how that works. So now I want to show you it in action. So if you remember this bowl from my last video, this was the slump mold. Now I'm going to attach a foot on it with slipping and scoring. So the first step is to line it up so that it looks even. So where I line it up now is where it's going to be. And now I'm going to use my pencil to mark around where it's sticking. So you can see right in here is where I'm going to score, and I'm just going to do all along this bottom here. If you have sort of an irregular shaped foot, say if you have a square or something that's not round, you also want to mark where it's going to be lined up so that it's correctly lined up. So I'm going to just put, so what you can do is just put 2 little marks here, and then you can see how these two are going to find each other again when you're reattaching. So it's also really important to flip this when you score it. So I score this side, not this side, because then I will be attaching upside down and the shape will actually might not fit. Even though this is round, it's still a little bit imperfect. So I want to make sure it's fitting perfectly in those lines. And now I'm going to check where that line is, applying the slip to both sides. And now just double check again where that mark is here, set them right on top there. And now I'm going to push down. So just like the other one when I was sliding it back and forth, this one I'm going to push down and twist. So I'm twisting it like this, just ever so slightly, so that it starts to compress and then the slip also squeezes out. This is what we want. Don't push so hard that your bowl is going to collapse though. Especially if the clay is still a little bit soft, you're not going to be able to push that hard. So once it stops turning, it's pretty much set. Now I can just set this aside like I did for the other one, and I will come back to clean it up in a moment. So now I've let this piece dry out for about 5 minutes, and I'm just gonna go back in again with my finger. And with the extra slip, I'm just gonna wipe it on to the edge of my slip container, or you can wipe it onto a towel. So here we go, our finished footed bowl. Looks quite cute. So one extra thing to keep in mind while you're working is that clay dries best when it dries evenly. So when you apply the slip, the drier parts of the clay will actually suck the water from the slip to dry it out. However, these pieces of clay are only leather hard. You do not want to attempt this when your piece is too dry. Now, if your piece is bone dry, as in completely dried out, do not attempt this at all. You're never going to attach anything to a bone dry piece. It's just not going to work. However, if it's not quite bone dry, but a little stiffer than this, one thing that you can do to increase your chances of a successful connection is to wrap your piece in plastic for 24 hours so that the moisture levels in the whole piece can stabilize and equalize underneath the plastic. And then after 24 hours, taking off the plastic again so that the piece can dry out. Now, when I'm saying a successful connection, if you don't do that, if you, for example, attach a bone dry piece or attach a piece that's too dry with too little scoring, it's not going to be a successful attachment, and therefore you will get cracks right along the attachment. So that's the thing that we're trying to avoid by slipping and scoring, is to prevent cracks from along those connecting lines. And now, you won't see the cracks right away. In fact, when you attach it, it will look like it's completely sealed. However, they will come out at some point. If not when it's drying, then after it's bisqued. If not when it's bisqued, then when it's glazed. So it's really important now to have a good, strong, solid attachment so that the whole piece can unify and settle into its positioning before it goes into the kiln so that you don't get any cracks. Thanks so much for watching this video. I hope it was helpful for you to learn how to make attachments in ceramics. This can be applied to anything from handles to feet to any sculptural piece that you can dream of. Anytime you want to stick two pieces of clay together, this is how you do it. Stay tuned for the next video where I will show you what to do with those pieces that you actually don't like and how you can reuse that clay to make a new piece.
Hey guys, it's me, Maya from Pottery, blah 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 blah, today I'm going to talk about. But before I start, make sure to click that subscribe button.
I'm not doing that.